Now, I've been thinking about something lately, and a friend of mine at work too, we've been talking about this. You know, once again, the old John Titor, time traveler. That story comes back into play. And I'm just thinking here, okay, so all of a sudden, Donald Trump comes out, I'm going to try to get into the Republican Party. And if by God they don't let me be their choice, then I may have to go independent. And the debate last night, I watched all but the last 15 minutes. And right out of the gates, you know, they're asking him, you know, can through a show of hands, can anyone here say whether or not they're absolutely adamant that they're going to be, you know, for the Republican Party or whatever, however they worded it. You know, if you're not 100%, can you raise your hand? So, only person raise his hand, Donald Trump. So you're here, you know, on the RNC, Republican, but you're not 100% committed. He said, well, look, if I feel and looks like I may win this, then absolutely I want to represent the Republican Party. But if for some reason I don't or can't, you know, then I'm going to have to go and, you know, start my own party if I have to, whatever, you know. Yeah, makes sense. In other words, I'm not going to commit to you 100% that I'll stay as a Republican if I don't get the nod by these other corrupt politicians from the Republican Party that give us the nod, yay or nay. And if he's way ahead of the pack, which he has been the whole time, and then it comes down to, okay, who's going to be right, we have a Democratic choice and a Republican choice, but they've got to be approved by the party, not by the American citizens who say we want this guy. No, it's got to be approved by these corrupt officials. And essentially what he's probably saying is, I don't think there's a chance in hell they're going to allow me to represent that party, even though I'll be smoking the competition, so to speak. So for that reason, I'm not going to commit. That because if I commit and I don't get the nod, then what you're saying is I'm just going to stand down at that point. It's not happening. That's essentially what he was saying. So I see it's still the same kind of softball questions that were thrown around last night. Yeah, they talked about the immigration thing and of course education and healthcare. It's the same stuff they talk about every damn time there's a debate. And I've mentioned this before. I said, you know, I watched for the first time ever several years ago, like the first presidential debate when Obama was first running. And I'm flipping through the channels back and forth. Mainstream media, I get to watch the clowns, mainstream parties with their softball loaded questions. It was ridiculous. I flip back to some obscure channel that has the third party, nobody candidate, so to speak, having a debate, which almost nobody's watching, of course. And I'm listening to the questions thrown at the third party candidates and their answers, and I'm actually floored. I can't believe what I'm hearing and seeing and listening to. Whoa. Where do they get these questions from? This is good stuff. This is what needs to be asked. These are the questions we need to hear answers to. And these guys are giving legit, real good answers. When we flip back to the mainstream, maybe they'll throw one of those questions. Nope. What do you think about the healthcare system? What do you think about abortion? Are you pro-life, pro-choice? Really? That's where we're at in this country? The same place we've been for the last 30 years? The same questions? It's unbelievable. But how this all made me think about the old John Titor story again is one of the comments he made. And granted, he did say, you know, based off of his whole story, you would say, okay, well, the time frame pretty much has come and gone, hasn't it? And he said there would be this revolution ultimately in America that stems from a problem with the elections. That would be the triggering factor. A problem with this. What is the cause of what really triggers us if there's a civil war or whatever that ends up starting? What is it? What can you tell us? He said there's a problem that stems from the elections. Problem with the elections. Presidential elections, huh? So, I'm just looking at this guy. He's in the wrong lane of traffic, facing me, coming at me. He stopped. If I was to turn left, I got an arrow in a lane to turn left. He's in that lane, facing me, stopped. Realizing, oops, sees my car, like, former police car, push bumper on the front and everything. And he goes, like, I know I made a mistake. Well, sir, you're in luck. Because ain't nothing I can do about it. Except look at you and keep going. Have a nice day. So, there's a problem with the elections. That's what this war that ultimately happens between citizens and government, basically, stems from. And then someone asked him about the president at the time when this is happening, and his comment was that she was more concerned about basically keeping the old status quo going. Nothing more than that. Didn't care about anything else. So I'm thinking, why? As soon as I read that years ago, I always ask myself this question, including talking to my buddy at work. Why did he have to be so perfectly politically correct in that statement and say the president, she was more concerned about the status quo or whatever? Wouldn't you normally just say the president was more concerned about, or he was more concerned about, because all presidents have been he's forever? Okay, this is in the year 2000. This is before we ever had a black president, Obama, anything. This is the year 2000. He/she. I said, man, I think he's hinting that we're going to have a female president. He's not just saying that to be politically correct. I think that's a hint he's saying. So we heard about, Hillary Clinton wanting to run. Remember back when Obama was running? And the reporters got on their airplane to interview them. They were both going to be on it, and then no one shows. And the plane starts taking off, and they're like, hey, where are they at? And they had to break the news to them. They're not here. They were being flown over to the Bilderberg meeting, both of them, to literally discuss who was going to actually be president and who was going to take the other position. Secretary of State or this or that, right? That's what the information came out of Bilderberg that year said. But she didn't get the nod. In other words, you're not going to be the president this time. And maybe it was decided back then, as long ago as that was, you're going to let him run. He's going to be the president twice in a row. You're going to be patient. You're going to have a nice job. You'll be going around doing your thing. After his 8 years are up, Hillary, you're next. Okay. I bet that's how that went. So here we are, where that's coming. We're getting close to those elections, aren't we? And she's running. She's supposedly the leader of the pack in her party. And now all polls show her coming down. Over here, polls are up again. Honestly, I have a hard time believing all the polls. Because the entire time when you hear about a poll said such and such, just means that somebody else, some third party, has created and is running, and you are expected to believe what their results are. And considering that the media, the mainstream media, is owned by the same entity, When 20, 30, well, maybe a little more than 20, 25, 30 plus years ago, the mainstream media, different channels were owned by a whole bunch of different people or companies. Now they're basically under one little umbrella. And so are these other companies. So I have a hard time trusting that anyways. Like the old saying goes, it's not he who votes, it's he who counts the votes that matters. The same thing applies here. It's not he who voted in a poll, it's he who counted the poll to give you, well, to count the votes to give you the results of the poll. So I'm just saying that, could you imagine, and I'm thinking this now with the whole John Titor thing, Donald Trump keeps this thing and takes it and is running, and it is unbelievable the numbers he starts pulling. However you want to look at it, polls, no polls, whatever. And the elite realize, oh snap. We've never had a turnout like this or a backing of the people like this against an individual that we do not want in here. We're going to have to take care of this problem. And can you imagine, he appears to be winning prior to the actual election happening. Very soon, or the election's gonna happen very shortly. Donald Trump's in the top, he's winning, everything looks good. They know when the votes are cast, in a few days, voting happens, he's pretty much gonna win. And then, oh man, I missed some accident. Oh my God, breaking news, Donald Trump's plane crashed, or breaking news, Donald Trump, blah, 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 something. Oh, who we left with? We got to scramble for a secondary Republican, and against Hillary, that person lost, whatever. Or he does in fact win, and is shortly thereafter JFK'd, or in other words, killed. Accidental, crazy guy got him, mind control victim, whatever they throw at us, some nonsense. And somehow, whether his vice president was with him, there's something that happens to where someone else gets the job, and that someone else somehow is a she. Or again, at the last minute, they find something and they have to retract him from the presidential, choice or whatever. The Republican side, something happened, they yanked him, and he can't be the one now all of a sudden. Something happens that is completely unfair, that's unbelievably unfair, and the people are up in arms over it. This is crazy. How did we just let this happen? And then she gets the nod. She wins. You can see, okay, there was a problem with the presidential elections that this civil war that's starting stems from. And the interesting thing is, it's probably been a year now, I think, or so. I remember they were saying, they're saying that this John Titor character, through the lawyer that's always been in contact with, the only source of contact, I should say, with any media personality, or not really the regular media, mainstream, but, alternative media, and like the Coast to Coast AM show, things like that. And mentioned that he was told he's going to be coming back. I don't remember what show he was actually on, but I listened to the radio show when he said it. That John Titor and the guy was like begging him, please promise me, the day you find out solidly, okay, he's coming back, it'll be around this time frame. You'll reach out to me, please. And he's like, I'll do that, yeah, absolutely. Hadn't heard anything yet. But boy, would that be interesting if that happened again. And, because I don't care, the fact that it seems this is a weird story, time travel, oh, come on, When you listen to what that son of a gun had to say in the year 2000, 9/11 hadn't happened yet, the Patriot Act wasn't written, mass spying, surveillance wasn't happening to the level, anywhere near the level it's been at now. All the problem, everything we're talking about, all the issues that I come in here and talk about, how did that son of a gun know in the year 2000 where our country would be heading, and when most people were laughing him off the stage, so to speak, as he was saying this? Because picture the peak of Rome. Everything's awesome, man. The Roman Empire is awesome. We're good. Fantastic. Who the hell is this guy ruining the party, telling us about the future? Even it talked about a company called CERN, C-E-R-N, that was going to develop, ultimately, this particle that leads them to time travel. When the damn CERN collider hadn't even been built yet. That's kind of interesting. And finally, when they did do some tests on this thing, they discovered this, what they called the God particle. Some new particle that they're labeled the God particle. Never seen it before. You gotta be kidding me. Someone asked them, was the Chinese ever get into space? You'll be happy to know in a few years they will. Sure enough, I think it was 2004 if I recall, 3 or 4. Chinese first finally sent a man to space. How the hell does this guy know in the year 2000 if this is some kind of nonsense? That's all I want to know. And yet, it still sounds absurd to me, on the other hand. But again, all I'm after is information. I don't care where it comes from, to tell you the truth, as long as it ends up ultimately panning out, because if it never pans out, I don't want that information anymore. I need a new source. So, you really got to wonder, is this the election of the he/she thing that he's talking about? Because if you look at things now, and let's assume later this year on schedule, big economic problems across the world start happening. It trickles into 2016. It just gets worse, etc., etc., etc. Now all of a sudden the focus on the presidential debates is mostly what the hell's going on. Donald Trump's the one, he talked about, the financial system last night too, and I liked what he said, where he was coming from. And all of a sudden, that's the focus of the presidential elections. All the debates are about what's happening and how they're going to fix this mass, financial problem. And again, I could just see something happening where we get screwed again, because this is the last election. I'm telling you right now, this presidential election is the last one that's really going to matter. And if it's not done right, if we don't get the right person this last and final time, I'm telling you now, it's game over. I was just about to say this country will never be the same. And then it dawned on me instantly as that thought's coming to my mind, it already has changed that much. What the hell are you talking about? Never be the same. It's already past that. That's true. But if the right person can get in there, they can steer the ship one final time and try to fix things. That's not what the club wants. The club needs a massive problem because they need to implement New World Order policies. We can't be implementing New World Order policies when we just had someone come in the White House and fix things. So we got to get rid of that person and put in the person we want, who is some may call Hillary Clinton, who, as you can see, her record right now is horrible. What the things she's been involved in this cover-ups and email scandal, and there were in fact some classified things she did talk about in her private email, including some things from Benghazi, such as where the guy that got killed over there, I can't think of his name, was at. Okay, so you're using your little piddly private email account, which could have easily been hacked by bad guys, to figure out where this guy's at. That's a major problem, isn't it? So, bottom line is, this is it. This is the final one. It doesn't matter. Whoever gets voted in this time, whoever gets selected to be president this time, it's not going to matter the next time after that. It's the Titanic has already sunk at that point. It's sinking now drastically, but it's sunk after this election, unless we get the right person and only the right person. And I'm telling you right now, out of all the candidates that I've seen and heard, as much as I like Ron Paul and his son's running, Rand Paul, I got to go with the Donald on this one. And I was very, very conservative in my opinions, and just not even conservative, just I'm going to kind of keep that stuff to myself until I see what Donald Trump's all about. Because in the beginning, I thought immediately, oh, here we go, just what we need, another billionaire rich person to run as president. But then you think about it, well, he doesn't need to take money from lobbyists. He doesn't have to do the elite's bidding by them giving him campaign contributions. He's ready to fund his own campaign. Oh, wait a minute. Let me see. Let me just sit back before I make any more comments about this guy, because he may not actually be what I thought in the beginning, based off of what all other ones have been to date. He seems pretty legit. Oh wow, there's a video from him from 1988 on the Oprah show, where he's talking about some of the problems in our country. And she asked him if he'd ever run for president. He said pretty much, no, I don't think I ever would. However, at the very end, if things really needed to be changed and this and that, I'm not going to say I wouldn't do it. I might, but, I just don't foresee that. 1988. Okay, wait a minute. That was a pretty good comment. And I'm looking at him and the things he's saying now. And I thought, well, wait a minute, because if you play back Barack Obama, no one knew about that guy, and he came out saying all the right stuff. And look what we got. So, is Donald Trump going to be another one of those guys? The honest to goodness truth is it could happen, sure. This could be all a big show. But I don't think so. Based off of the mainstream media's reaction and things they're doing to him. Trying to cut his show off and dropping him from NBC. And they're not going to do that to one of their club members. No. And they're doing it to him. So when I started seeing that, I said, okay, they really don't like this guy. That means there's something to this. That means that he may be the real deal of what he's saying. So, good news is we don't have long to find out about this whole he/she thing. And even if it isn't a she, but it's the right timing, and there's a problem with the presidential elections, and a he decides to become president, it's not the one we wanted, and they're still only concerned with the status quo of the current politics, doesn't mean that what he said is wrong. Titor. I'm just telling you, I've got a real sneaky suspicion ain't nobody going to come out and be politically correct and say he/she referring to a president. When we all know damn well they've all been men. You're not going to just try to be politically correct on an internet forum where people are bashing you anyways about everything you're saying. You would just leave it as the next president, or this president, the second president, blah, blah, blah. Not he/she. To me, that's an Easter egg. That is a hint of when you see the she part of this equation come into view, and she becomes president, you're going to know when I'm talking about. All these little dates and things I've been giving you, I know better because I know the federal government knows and collects all this data. I'm not going to tell them exactly what's going to happen so they know too. I want them to write this off a long time ago and never look at my story. So I'm going to make up these fake dates and all this nonsense, and it's not going to make any sense to anybody until it starts happening. You'll still be able to piece the timeline together. He talked about these inner tubes and tires and bikes. Make sure you have bicycles and extra tires and tubes. How far away from main society should a person try to get away to? Anywhere that it would take more than 3 or more days for a walking person to get to. So we should all have bikes and extra tires. Yep. And in relation to that, someone asked him something about it. He said, well, you'll find out regarding this China thing, you'll find out in 2008. I took that as we're going to find out in 2008. We need those bikes around that time. That's how I read that. But when I think about it, he just may have meant, hey, what happened in 2008? We had the financial crisis of a lifetime. So if he's referring to China being, because he mentions where these things are manufactured, in other words, he's saying China is making these things. China is making these inner tubes you use in your bike and the tires. So if he's telling you to get spares while you can, that to me sounds like China's not going to be sending us any bike tires and inner tubes. And we, as Lindsey Williams said, watch China. China's the big one. And China's markets have been destroyed recently by the club. And China is probably going to be upset with what happens when this whole collapse goes down with the United States, like a lot of other countries will be. And may say, we don't want to be, they're not inviting us to any meetings anymore. Worldwide, we're having these economic forums. The United States isn't even kind of invited. If we're your business partner, your consumer of your goods, don't you want to invite us over there? Apparently China doesn't care. So if China doesn't care and is not inviting us to these meetings and is inviting all these other countries that we would consider nobodies, it appears that China is weaning itself off of America for the day that it can say, screw you guys, I'm out of here, I don't need you anymore. Just like we don't need your IMF, we created our own bank to help struggling countries and allies of ours. We don't need your ruthless IMF, we've got our own. Which they do have now, finally. They've created one, like they said they would recently. Oh, really? So the thing that the United States offered, which was the IMF, that's where that thing was born out of. They've got a competitor to that. Well, we've got the COMEX markets and the gold and silver. Oh, well, they have some now, too. You can see where this is going. So if China, for whatever reason, stops selling us goods, you could bet your rear end that bike tires and inner tubes would make that cut also. Just my thought process here is all. It's just how I'm thinking of all this. So, I do have a feeling there'll be still ample signs of things like that before they actually happen. Could be wrong, but I still think, and I say ample signs for you and me, not the average person who doesn't pay attention to this. Nope. So, just something to think about. Interesting times, huh? Take care.